The switchboard light blinked red at 1:58 a.m., and Naomi Vance almost let it ring out. 3 weeks into the graveyard shift at Lantern Line, she'd learned which calls could wait 4 seconds and which couldn't. This one felt like it could wait. She was wrong. She picked up. Static, thin and wet, like rain through a bad speaker. Then a voice, small, young, familiar in a way that made her stomach drop before her mind caught up. "Did you fall asleep again?" Naomi's hand went cold around the headset cord. Only one person had ever said those exact words to her, in that exact order, in that exact tone. And he'd been dead for 3 years. She hung up before she could stop herself. "Bad line," Delacroix asked from the doorway, not looking up from his clipboard. "Something like that," Naomi said. Her voice came out steadier than she felt. "Marrow Creek's phone infrastructure is held together with duct tape and prayer," he said. "You'll get static calls, dead air, crossed wires. Don't read into it." She wanted to believe him. She almost did. The next hour ran normal. A teenager scared of her stepfather's temper. A lonely trucker who just wanted someone to talk to until sunrise. Naomi handled both well. She was good at this job, better than she'd expected to be, mostly because she never let herself think too hard about why she'd taken it. Priya dropped into the next cubicle around 3 a.m. with 2 coffees, sliding one across without asking. "You look like you saw a ghost," Priya said. "Just tired. That call that came in earlier, the one you logged as disconnected? I checked the routing. That number's been dead for years. Whole line got decommissioned." Naomi's throat tightened. She already knew that. She'd grown up dialing that number from a bedroom 2 doors down the hall from the phone that used to hang on their kitchen wall. "Probably a glitch," Naomi said, and Priya let it go, because that's what people did with things they didn't want to be true either. If you've ever answered a call you wish you hadn't, you already know exactly what she's feeling right now. If you're the type who stays till the end of these, go ahead and hit subscribe. This one's worth it. The second call came in at 4:12 a.m. Same static. Same thin, wet quality, like the line was underwater. "You told me to go back to sleep," the voice said. "You said it wasn't real. Remember?" Naomi did remember, word for word. She'd said those exact things to Caleb the night the creek behind their house swelled past the tree line and he'd woken up scared, certain he heard something moving outside his window. She'd been 16 and exhausted and irritated at being woken up, and she'd told her little brother to go back to sleep, that it wasn't real. By morning, Caleb was gone. The flood took him less than 100 yards from the house. She'd never told anyone what she said to him that night. Not her parents. Not a therapist. Not Priya, who she considered the closest thing she had to a friend now. Nobody. She pulled the call log with shaking hands. There was no record of the call. Not the first one. Not this one. As far as the system was concerned, the line had sat silent since 1:58 a.m. She didn't sleep when her shift ended. Instead, she stayed in the break room, pulling old personnel files under the excuse of training research, and found something that made the back of her neck go numb. 5 years before Naomi ever applied to Lantern Line, an operator named Ruth Okafor had filed an incident report. Same graveyard shift. Same date on the calendar down to the day. Ruth described a caller using words that shouldn't have been known to anyone outside my own home. She quit 2 days later and never came back for her final paycheck. Whatever this was, it hadn't started with Naomi. It had been waiting for her seat to be empty. By the time her next shift began, Naomi had convinced herself she could handle it rationally. Document everything, report it, treat it like any other operational anomaly. That plan lasted until 1:30 a.m., when she noticed the wall clock behind Delacroix's office read 6 minutes ahead of her phone. By 2 a.m., it was 11 minutes ahead. By 2:30, every clock in the building, wall clocks, computer taskbars, her own phone, had synced to the exact same impossible time, ticking steadily toward one number like it was being pulled there on a string. 2:47 a.m. She knew that number. It had been carved into her for 3 years. 2:47 a.m. was the time stamped on the search and rescue report, the moment Caleb's body was recovered from the creek bank half a mile downstream. At 2:41, she played back the earlier recorded call, the one the system claimed didn't exist, but had somehow saved anyway in a folder she didn't remember creating. The child's voice was still there, but underneath it, faint like a second layer of tape bleeding through. She heard her own voice, 16 years old, saying it wasn't real. Some of you already know exactly where this is going, don't you? Drop it in the comments if you figured it out before the reveal. I want to see who gets there first. The second hand on every clock in the building crept toward 2:46. Naomi picked up the headset with hands that wouldn't stop shaking, and for the first time in 3 years, she didn't hang up. "I'm here," Naomi said. Her voice cracked on the second word. "I'm not hanging up this time." The static shifted, not louder, but closer, like something leaning in. "You didn't come," the voice said. Caleb's voice, but wrong somehow, stretched thin across years it shouldn't have crossed. "I called and called." "I know." Naomi's eyes burned. She was alone in the cubicle, headset pressed so hard against her ear it hurt, and still she felt like the whole building was listening. "I heard you. That night. I heard the phone ring and I heard you get up, and I told myself it was nothing because I wanted to go back to sleep. I've never told anyone that. I let everyone believe I slept through it. I didn't. I chose not to get up." Saying it out loud didn't feel like relief. It felt like reopening something that had scarred over wrong, cutting through 3 years of scar tissue in a single breath. "Why didn't you come?" the voice asked, and for the first time it didn't sound haunting. It sounded like a scared 10-year-old, which was worse. "Because I was 16 and tired, and I thought I had 100 more chances to make it right later," Naomi said. "I didn't know that night was the only one I'd get." The clock above Delacroix's office read 2:46. Priya found her 20 minutes later, staring at a deadline she hadn't hung up. "Naomi?" Priya touched her shoulder, and Naomi flinched like she'd been underwater. "Hey, you're shaking. What happened? What time is it?" Naomi asked. Her voice sounded far away, even to herself. Priya checked her phone. 3:15. Naomi looked at the wall clock. 3:15. Ordinary. Unremarkable. Whatever had pulled every clock in the building toward that one frozen minute had let go the second it passed. "You should go home," Priya said gently. "You look like you haven't slept in days." "I haven't," Naomi admitted. It was the most honest thing she'd said to a coworker in 3 weeks. She didn't tell Priya about the call. Not yet. Some things needed to stay hers a little longer, the way grief sometimes needs privacy before it can survive being spoken about twice. Delacroix caught her on the way out, arms crossed, looking at her with something that wasn't quite sympathy and wasn't quite warning. "Ruth used to stand right where you're standing," he said. Same look on her face. Naomi's stomach turned. "You knew." "I knew there was a report. I didn't know what to do with it, so I did what everyone in this town does with things they can't explain." He shrugged, but it didn't look casual. It looked tired, in a way that suggested he'd carried this longer than he wanted to admit. "I filed it and hoped it wouldn't come back around." "It came back around," Naomi said quietly. "Yeah," Delacroix said. "It did. If the story got under your skin at all, that's the point. Subscribe if you want more like it, because Marrow Creek isn't done being told about." Morning came the way it always did, indifferent to what had happened in the dark. Naomi walked out into a gray Marrow Creek sunrise, coffee in hand, feeling lighter in a way she couldn't fully explain and heavier in another way she understood completely. She'd said it, finally, out loud to the one version of Caleb that had ever asked her to. Whether that changed anything, whether it undid a single second of that night 3 years ago, she didn't know. She suspected it didn't. Some things don't get undone. They just get carried differently once you stop pretending the weight isn't there. She passed a girl she didn't recognize, clipboard in hand, nervously reading over an employee handbook. "First night?" Naomi asked. "Tonight, actually," the girl said, smiling in the specific, brittle way people smile when they're trying not to seem as nervous as they feel. "Graveyard shift. Guess I drew the short straw." "What date do you start?" The girl checked her clipboard. "The 14th. Naomi's coffee cup stopped halfway to her mouth. The 14th. The same date 1 year later. The same shift. The same seat that had once belonged to Ruth Okafor and then to Naomi and now, apparently, to someone else. "Something wrong?" the girl asked. Naomi looked at her for a long moment. Young, unbothered, utterly unaware of what waited in the static at 1:58 a.m. "No," Naomi said finally. "Nothing's wrong. Just if the line ever glitches on you, keep the recording. Don't delete it, no matter what it says." She didn't wait for a response. She walked to her car, started the engine, and didn't look back at the building, though some part of her already knew she'd be back before the 14th rolled around again. Not on shift, but watching, waiting to see if the girl would answer the call the way she had, or the way she used to. The schedule board on the break room wall, unseen, unnoticed, already had the new hire's name written into the same graveyard slot, same date, like it had been waiting for her specifically. Some lines never really disconnect. They just wait for someone new to pick up.